Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. If you have been here before, then thank you for coming back and watching another video, and if you are new, then a special hello to you. Today we will be talking about the story of Mama Cass. And if you don't know Mama Cass, then you will know the band Mamas and Papas, and if you say, I don't know who Mamas and Papas are, then you will know the song California Dreaming. If you quickly look on Spotify, if you're still unsure, then you'll probably know the song once you hear it. The band were iconic in the 60s, and Mama Cass became an icon all on her own. Mama Cass was a particularly interesting figure of the time because she wasn't the standard size that you would see on television. Cass was a curvaceous woman who pretty much broke stereotypes of what women should look like in that time. However, not everyone saw her as a positive role model, and there was a lot of fat phobia at that time. Cass had one of the best voices of anyone ever. And that's not just my opinion, even Frank Sinatra adored her voice. However, this was overshadowed by her size, and she was constantly known as the big one in the Mamas and Papas. I also want to point out, if you look at all the photos of the band, they really did make such a factor of her weight. So there are some lovely photos of Cass, and here's one, and here's another, but then even on the album covers and the promos for the music, this is what they did. They would pretty much put her in the worst position she could be in to really just emphasize her size. I really hate the media of the time that she was alive, and I really hate whoever said, yep, that album cover's fantastic, let's go with that for the promo. Anyway, I'm getting a bit in my feelings about this already, but this is a big point of the story. In my opinion, Cass Elliot was such a beautiful woman, and she wasn't just beautiful inside, she was obviously beautiful outside too. But let's talk a little bit more about her and the story of Cass Elliot. So Cass Elliot was actually born Ellen Naomi Cohen on the 19th of September 1941. She was born in Baltimore in Maryland, but grew up in Alexandria in Virginia. But when Ellen was 15, her family would move back to Baltimore in Maryland. Her parents were Philip and Bess Cohen, and she had two siblings. She had a brother Joseph and a sister Leah. Her childhood was a really happy one, but her family were incredibly poor. They faced constant financial struggles, but Philip then had an ingenious idea of creating a business that would sell lunches to construction workers, which then ended the financial struggles for the family. Her family absolutely adored opera, and Ellen absolutely adored performing. There was often also jazz playing in the house, which Ellen was a big fan of. So Ellen got the nickname of Cass in high school, and there are two different reasonings on Google as to why she got this nickname, but there's not one that is entirely trusted, so I'm just going to put both of them in this. So one source says that her father actually called her Cass because it was a shortening of the name Cassandra, which was a direct link to the Greek prophet/priestess. It is also then said that Cass actually gave herself the nickname because one of her favourite singers was Peggy Cass, and she gave herself the nickname Cass as an homage to her. When Cass left high school, she soon moved to New York. In New York, she would start calling herself Cass Elliot, and Elliot was named after her friend that had tragically passed away in a car accident. In New York, she would start to work in theatre as she had a big dream to be on the stage. When she was working in theatre, she actually was on the same circuit as Barbra Streisand. And she and Barbra Streisand actually auditioned for the same role, but she did lose the role to Barbra Streisand. When this happened, Cass then decided that she was going to come away from theatre and look more into music. Cass then joined a group called The Big Three. Folk music around this time was actually gaining a lot of popularity, and the Big Three's music genre was folk. The band did do well, but after 2 years they decided to split up because of music and personal differences. Cass Elliot would then find herself in a new group called the Mugwumps. In this group, a new member would join, and his name was Denny Doherty. But the Mugwumps did not last long either, and after 8 months they split too. Denny would be unemployed, but he would still be looking for work in a new group, whereas Cass Elliot decided that she was going to try being a solo singer. Denny eventually found John Phillips and his wife Michelle, who were in a group together. Denny would eventually end up joining this group because John and Michelle thought that he had a good look and he would fit well within this band. Denny would keep in contact with Cass, and they had such a lovely friendship, and they would phone each other and just basically see how each other was doing from day to day. The friendship was one-sided though, because Cass was fully in love with Denny. And Denny did love her too, but as a friend. Cass really thought that he was the one for her, and since the moment she laid eyes on him, she just fell in love with him. But Denny never felt this way about Cass, and he never saw their friendship becoming romantic. But Denny was a great person. He saw Cass for who she was. He didn't see her for her figure, he didn't see her for her physical appearance. He saw that she was an incredible person, completely captivating and charismatic, and that she had an undeniable talent for singing. So as I've mentioned before, a lot of people at this time had a very negative view on anyone who wasn't size 0. Or at least a healthy size, but definitely very small if you were in the public eye. A person who shared this view was John Phillips. Denny really wanted John and Michelle to meet Cass because he knew that she was just an amazing person, so full of life and energy, and he knew that they would love her. So one night this meeting happened, and Cass has come over and she's going to meet Michelle and John. And apparently she wore a bright pink jumper, a little white miniskirt and some go-go boots, which I think sounds amazing. Please bring that style back. And it went really well and everyone loved her. She got on extremely well with Michelle and John thought she was really fun to be around. However, Cass didn't just want a friendship with John and Michelle. She wanted to be in the band too. Denny was obviously really into this idea and Michelle was like, she's great, let's try her out. But John again refused to even consider Cass being involved in the group. John was said to be really quite controlling. He was also said to be incredibly stubborn. And to avoid making Cass a member of the group, he would say things like, she can't sing the way I want her to, she can't hit the high notes, and obviously we know that they're flat out lies. The truth was that John just did not want a woman of Cass's size in his band. Let's just pause on that for a minute, because this really was the reality of the time. People would completely overlook someone even though they had talent and charisma and they would bring such power to a group just because of their looks. I think it's so sad, and I mean, it has not still been taken completely away from society. There is still a lot of fat shaming out there, but there are definitely more people now in the public eye who are of a larger size. I just think that it's incredibly sad that Cass almost didn't get this opportunity because she was a bigger woman, basically. And that's it. There was nothing else about her that was off-putting. She had the entire package, and yet still John was against bringing her into the group because it was going to bring the look of the group down. Like I say, this is still not something that's completely deleted from society. This does still happen, but I just think it is really quite gross, honestly. Anyway, let's continue. So Cass was obviously told, no, you can't be in the band, it's not happening. So what did Cass do? She followed them to every single show that they played at. And she would do everything just to be around the band. She would be a waitress, she would be a roadie, she would help out in any way that she could just to be around the group when they were performing. Apparently as well, she was a horrible waitress, but I have to give her so much respect because she wasn't doing it as a job. She was literally doing it to be around the band. So fair play to her for the hustle. So the group then decided that they needed a holiday. So this is John, Denny and Michelle. Obviously not Cass, because Cass is not part of the group. And the way in which that they were going to decide where they were going to go on holiday was that they would spin a globe and Michelle would place her finger on it and that would be the place that they went to. Michelle's finger landed on the Virgin Islands and therefore they decided to go there. I mean, that's a pretty risky game, isn't it? She could have literally slapped her finger on Antarctica and then that would have been an interesting holiday, but still, Virgin Islands was where she magically got her finger to, so well done, Michelle. So the three went away together, and this is where things start to go a little bit south, because Michelle, who is married to John, Michelle and John Phillips, she starts getting flirtatious with Denny. This was later found out to be more than just flirting, it was a whole affair. So whilst the group were in the Virgin Islands, of course, Denny is still talking to Cass on the phone each night, and he says to her, you should come out here, you should be with us. Also on the phone, he does admit to her that he and Michelle are flirting. And understandably, Cass is very hurt and very angry over this. I know that the anger part of it is something that can be debated because, you know, Denny never said that he and Cass would ever be together. He was quite fair in making it that they were just friends. But Cass was in love with Denny and she never thought anything would happen with him and Michelle because obviously Michelle was married to John. Regardless of this though, Cass did decide to go to the Virgin Islands and meet the band out there. And when Cass met the group in the Virgin Islands, something happened. It's not something I can find exactly what happened, but John was then willing to have Cass in the band. I know, strange. John also said that one night she hit her head on a lead pipe and then she could start singing the high notes perfectly. So of course there was no reason now as to why she couldn't be in the band. It's a really weird story and I'm not too sure why or how this happened. Sorry, I've just had to move my camera because I didn't realise that it was slipping and all of my ornaments were suddenly like this, so apologies. So Cass went along with this story because at the end of the day, she was now in the group. This is something that she wanted from the start. She wanted to be in the group and she wanted to be in the group ultimately to be with Denny. So she must have been hurt by the actual reasonings that stopped her from being in the group before, but that didn't matter now because she was going to be in the band. There was also an interview with Michelle Phillips a lot later in life, and she actually said that Cass said to her on one occasion, "You can have any man you wanted, why choose the one that I love?" How sad is that? I think Michelle did feel bad about it, and Denny also later did regret certain choices he made with Cass. But at least they've taken accountability, which is something huge for a lot of people, so good for them. So up until this point, the three of them had actually been called the New Journeymen, but now they've got two women in the band, so they have to change that name, but what are they going to change it to? So one night they're all together as they normally are and they're watching TV. And they're just flicking through the channels and then they see a news report on the Hells Angels. And the reporter then asks a member of the Hells Angels, "Well, what do you call the women?" And the Hells Angel member then replies, "Well, we call them our mamas," as a sign of respect and that they're so much more than just the women in the group. So Cass hears this, of course, and then she says, "Well, I want to be a mama." John then says, "Well, if you're the mama, what would I be?" And Cass says, "Well, you can be the papa." And then the band name, the Mamas and Papas, was born. Lou Adler was a record and film producer, and when the group returned from the Virgin Islands, Lou was particularly interested in Cass. He saw her star quality and knew that she had exceptional talent. He also thought that because she was a plus-size woman, she would actually be a positive influence and it would be quite a striking quality for the band, a USP if you will. And even though John had previously said, "You can be in the band, you can sing now, the lead pipe incident has caused you to hit all the notes I want you to hit," he was still unsure of Cass being a full-time member of the band. So they had a vote on whether or not she should be in the band, and the only person who said that she shouldn't was John. But because there was a majority vote in Cass Elliot being in the band, she became a full-time member. And just to upset John further, she very quickly became everyone's favourite member of the Mamas and Papas. She was gaining a lot of fame, yes, one due to her size, but also because they realised that she was an exceptional vocalist. She had a wonderful sense of humour, and she would do a lot of interviews where people were just captivated by her because she was such a lovely person. She was a natural on stage, and in her interviews again, her personality was so wonderful that people were just like, "Wow, she's so different, we love her." So in just a short amount of time, she actually became the most famous person in LA. Cass generated a lot of income and she actually bought herself a beautiful home, which was the former home of the actress Natalie Wood. Cass wanted to redecorate the home and she actually wanted to make it a party house. The house was very quickly filled with all kinds of celebrities and up-and-comers. Cass would have a lot of parties and anyone who was anyone was there. Cass at this point did have a boyfriend and his name was Graham Nash, and she did of course adore him, but she never fell out of love with Denny. Cass had always wanted to be a mother, and in 1966 this dream had come true. On the 26th of April 1967, Owen Vanessa Elliott was born. Her father's identity remained a secret for years. People were speculating about who it could be, but years and years later, they did finally find out that Owen's father was Charlie Day, a country music guitarist. Oh, and just to add here that when Cass told the band that she was pregnant, John asked her when she was getting an abortion. If you didn't already guess, I don't like John. So Cass was known as Mama Cass. Because of the Mamas and the Papas, she was always Mama Cass. So Mama Cass was a songwriter herself, and she went on to write Dream a Little Dream of Me. And Cass wanted the full credit for this song. She sang it, she wrote it, so she deserved the credit, right? Wrong. Cass insisted that the song credits read Mama Cass with the Mamas and Papas, and this of course made John very angry. Not much that she did sit right with him, but this was the final straw. At the end of 1968, each member of the Mamas and Papas started writing their own solo albums, and in early 1969, the Mamas and Papas were no more. In 1968, following her solo album, Cass was actually booked for a 3-week residency at Caesar's Palace. But 6 months before this, Cass went on a crash diet. And 3 weeks before her opening night, she developed a very serious throat infection. It was so bad that it affected her voice, and she should not have sang on the opening night. The opening night at Caesar's Palace was a full celebrity audience, and Cass had a fever, and actually she did try her best to do the performance, but they then said that she shouldn't have done it at all because her singing was not good. She also felt so unwell that she was then rushed to hospital. Around this time as well, her drug use was heightened and she began using. So Cass wanted to lose weight, and that's all well and good because Cass wanted to do that. But in this Good Housekeeping article, the interview is not great. I've got the article, so I'll pop it here and then I'll pop it again just so you can see it clearer. But she's basically saying that she's harming herself, that this is a bad diet to be on. But she was receiving so much praise for losing 100 pounds that what she was saying in the article was fine. I just feel that a lot of people failed her at this time because I think this was the moment that someone needed to step in and look after her. If we're also talking about her substance abuse, there is another part of this that needs mentioning. So Cass was obviously a party animal, we all know this. But in 1967, she was arrested because she skipped out on a bill and she stole sheets from a hotel. She did spend a night in jail, but the charges were dropped. So this is where now it's more of an issue because it's not just partying and doing substances to get a good feeling from them, it's also getting her in a lot of trouble. So again, this was 1967, so there has been a few instances where someone could have just stepped in and helped, and I truly wish they did. Oh, and I found something else out which is kind of interesting. So something extra about John's view on Cass and how negatively he thought on her revolves around Charles Manson. Weird, right? So Cass had a lot of people in her home, and I've told you that it was the party place to be. Well, Cass then met a lot of people in all of her parties. Cass then became really close with Sharon Tate. And it wasn't just Cass who made friends with Sharon Tate, but also Denny. And the night in which Sharon Tate was killed, Denny had actually been planning to go to her house. Weirdly though, he decided very last minute, actually, I'm not going to go. But John then blamed Cass because she was now getting the group involved with bad people. But it's not really anyone's fault, is it? Other than, Manson and his cult. I don't know how and why John put the blame for this on Cass, but he managed to. I just thought that was interesting, so I had to add it. When I read Charles Manson, Mama Cass, I was like, how? How is there a correlation between the two? But that is how. It's also quite weird for me because I feel that Charles Manson was like years ago, and I mean it is, but years before Mama Cass, but actually it was the same time, which just blew my mind. Cass started hating the name Mama Cass, so much so that she actually created a song that was called Don't Call Me Mama Anymore. She was so done with the nickname and everything that went with it, so from this point on she was to be known as Cass Elliot. Not only was Cass creating music, but she also appeared heavily on television during the same short period. She starred in 2 television variety specials, the Mama Cass television program from ABC in 1969, and Don't Call Me Mama Anymore on CBS in 1973. On April the 22nd, 1973, she collapsed before an appearance on The Tonight Show. She was rushed to hospital, and in a way, this was the beginning of the end for her. So in July of 1974, Cass landed the gig of her dreams. She was going to have a 2-week engagement at the London Palladium. After her final performance, Cass rang Michelle and said that she got a standing ovation from everyone in the audience. Michelle believed that this was Cass's way of saying that I'm standing on my own 2 feet now and that I've finally broken away from the mamas and papas. But obviously, Cass still retained such a good friendship with Denny and such a good friendship with Michelle that she just wanted to tell them that something amazing had happened to her. On the same night that Cass rang Michelle, Cass would pass away in her hotel bedroom. She was found the following day, and next to her on the nightstand was a ham sandwich that had a bite taken out of it. At this time, a lot of celebrities were passing away from addictions, and they also thought that before the post-mortem had happened, that Cass had also passed away from an addiction. So to stop reporters posting this as the reasoning for her death, they said that she choked on the ham sandwich, which in hindsight was possibly the worst thing that they could have done. The Rolling Stone magazine published this article, and then her death was made to be a mockery. The big one from Mamas and Papas died from choking on a ham sandwich. Up until 2020, this was still believed to be the reasoning for her death, but actually, Cass Elliot had died from a heart attack. The heart attack was due to years of crash dieting, binge eating and substance abuse. Her diet was so severe too that she would crash diet for 7 months, and this would include 4 days of fasting a week. She unfortunately did not get the help she needed in time, which resulted in her death at a very young age of 32. Her daughter Owen was only 7 years old at the time of the tragedy. So that is the story of Mama Cass. I had to cover this one because I really do love the Mamas and Papas. California Dreamin' is one of my favourite songs. But I did not know that there was this awful mockery around her death because of her size. I've said it many times in this video, but it is such a shame that she was overshadowed by her figure as opposed to her incredible, incredible, incredible talent. Cass was always so positive, and I think this just reinstates the idea that please check on your friends, even if they seem really, really happy. The sad fact is they might not be. So please check on your friends, and also, very importantly, check on yourself. Make sure you are happy, and I really hope that you are. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. I love doing this. I am suddenly finding myself without the time to record and write scripts, but I promise you these will be more often. I've had a few requests for some videos. They are being written. I've got about 5 scripts half written right now. So if you have asked me to cover a story, I promise you it has been started. I just need to finish it. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for every like and every comment. I see them all, I read them all, and I'm ever so thankful to you and your interaction. If you like this content and haven't subscribed, do feel free to subscribe to me because we post a new video at least every 2 weeks at the moment, and definitely every month. But for now, that's all from me. Thank you again, and bye-bye for now.